And I went like 6 months, maybe longer, without doing a ring muscle up. And we did all the things that you said. And then one day you were just like, all right, we need to just do it. And so I just start going. And then all of a sudden I'm at 8 ring muscle ups and they don't feel hard. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to come down because I haven't done these in 6 months. But I was like, how did that happen? Like, how am I an athlete who struggles so much with this movement? I have not touched it for 6 months. How can I just do that? And it was, the lesson was you can still get better, or at the very least maintain the thing without doing the thing.
For sure.
And I think that is important for athletes to know as they're navigating these tweaks that are going to happen in your career. Yeah, so when I turned, I think like 32 or 33, this phenomenon happened. I used to be so resilient, and then I called it my traveling tweak. It was like it lived somewhere in my body, and then eventually it would get better, but it wouldn't go away. It would just move to a different part of my body. So I felt like I was always just kind of trying to work around something that wasn't feeling good. And the thing about a tweak is if you're not careful, you can turn it into an injury, right? And we should probably get into the difference between a tweak and an injury, but it caused me to have to work around different things all the time while still chasing a high level in the sport and trying to make progress. But let's start with, you're a physical therapist, so give us what's the difference between an injury and a tweak in your mind?
And do it in a fun way. I don't want to hear this science nerd talk.
Yeah. Okay, so an injury is something that's going to basically just keep you out of the gym. It like hurts, like legitimately hurts. The tweak is like something that you're like, there's something in the background and it bothers me, but I can basically still do everything. There's probably some things that I'm limited in, but for the most part, like if I need to, I can ignore it and I can do the thing that I need to do.
Which begs the question though, when do you ignore it? Like,
it's a great question, man. I don't, to me, there's definitely some like parameters that I would like pull from. If we're in off-season training and you're feeling a little tweaky and like something's in the background kind of lingering, it's like, okay, well, let's just do something proactive so we don't make this an actual injury. Mm-hmm. But if you're close to competition, there's kind of moments in time where you have to be like, I have to just do the thing and deal with the consequences of what occurs. Now that depends on the person and the level that they're competing at and the importance of the event. But there are times where you have to kind of just ignore the signals that your body is giving you and just go through with doing the thing.
Are you talking about like when I did a whole semifinal with a torn labrum on accident?
Yes, exactly.
That wasn't a tweak though. We found out that was an injury.
No, that was a real injury. You had tore your labrum and tore your rotator cuff simultaneously. And you did the in-affiliate semifinals that year?
No, that was the year that we still had semifinals, like at a real
event.
Place. Yeah, we had real semifinals.
Yeah, I remember that you and I were meeting like, I don't know, felt like every other day doing like dry needling, specific exercises.
Yeah, that was just trying to stay alive.
Yeah, just like trying to like keep you feeling like good enough to do the things. But that was a situation where it's just like you had to show up for the team and show up for yourself. And it wasn't like a question of, well, if I don't do this, like what happens? Like you had to do the thing. Yeah.
So we've co-coached a lot of athletes together in and out. And a lot of times it's when someone's hurt or tweaked and I'm like, Kyle, help me. So he'll help me progress an athlete back into, feeling healthy, feeling good. And I remember one thing that I use a lot for people is you said the 3 out of 10 rule.
Yep.
Like if your pain level is below a 3 out of 10, then it's okay to kind of explore it and what your session is and still do that movement and then see how you feel the next day.
Yeah.
But if you're exceeding that 3 out of 10 pain, then it's probably better to shut it down. I feel like that's a good marker for people as they're navigating tweaks, knowing like, am I going to push it too far? Am I going to like push this into an injury or not?
Yeah, it just gives you something it gives you something to anchor yourself to instead of it being so like nebulous and you're like, I don't know how this feels. So it's like, if the thing that's bothering you is 3 out of 10 on a pain scale, which is like specific to you, because 3 out of 10 for me and 3 out of 10 for you is probably a little bit different, but it's specific to you. And it doesn't ramp up during the session or doesn't linger into the next day, but it was like a little bit discomfort or a little bit of pain. It's like, okay, that's probably something that you can work through and start to like build on top of. Because if we constantly ignore working through range of motion or things that are painful, we probably just ignore that position or that movement, and that movement never gets better or that position never gets better. So there definitely is a fine line to walk. And then, you and I have navigated that with multiple clients and then obviously yourself as well.
Yeah, there's I mean, for most athletes in the sport, when you're chasing a high level of performance and you're doing all the things that CrossFit demands, you've probably already experienced a tweak, or maybe you're like me and you have a traveling tweak, which I'm sorry. But you can't always, like you said, you can't always avoid it. So having that measure, I think, is super important. But then also knowing, like you said, within a season, if you're just starting your off season, then it could be okay to shut it down.
Yep.
And when we say shut it down, we don't necessarily mean you're not doing anything to strengthen that. It might be like, say, so like for me, if my shoulder is hurting in ring muscle ups, well, that's a tough movement to kind of push through with shoulder pain. But one thing I learned from working with you is I can get way better at ring muscle ups, or at least like not get worse without touching ring muscle ups for a long time.
Yep.
So do you want to talk a little bit about how you would navigate? We could just use that as an example. If someone has a tweak in their shoulder, but ring muscle ups are a weakness like they were for me, and I can't afford to spend 3 to 4 months not addressing that movement, how would you approach that?
Yeah, I think so. For you specifically, what we ended up doing was obviously we pulled out the dynamic thing, because that was the thing that was bothering you. It was like the turnover, getting to the bottom position, and then having like the strength to dip out of that was all just like was just too
arch position.
Any arch position
really
was
tough.
too aggressive on your shoulder. So just it didn't make any sense to be like, okay, like yes, this is the movement that is like your weakest link. We need to do this. Like let's just push through. It's like, well, we have all this time. You're not competing until next year. So like, let's pull back. And we're not pulling back to like strip away movements, which is, I like that you said that, because I think people, when they hear me say, we're going to take something out, it means like, we're not doing that at all. It just means that we're either taking a sidestep, so a lateralization, or we're taking a regression to a movement, but we're still going to work on that movement. So for you specifically, what we ended up doing was a lot of strict gymnastics, a lot of positional isometric gymnastics, and then we actually put in a bunch of bodybuilding, which I think between the three of those things actually carried over really, really well. And it gave you this like foundation that allowed you to explore the movement again. And then actually the first day, I don't even know if you remember this.
No, I do.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So before this time, I think my max unbroken ring muscle up set was like 10. And I like had worked for years and years and years to get that, and was like at the peak of my ring muscle up capacity, like in competing when I hit it. And I went like 6 months, maybe longer, without doing a ring muscle up. And we did all the things that you said. And then one day you were just like, all right, we need to just do it. Like you're fine. Let's just start doing it. And I was like, well, how many did I do? And you're like, just go up and just see how it feels. And so I just start going, and then all of a sudden I'm at 8 ring muscle ups, and they don't feel hard. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to come down because I haven't done these in 6 months. But I was like, how did that happen? Like, how am I an athlete who struggles so much with this movement? I have not touched it for 6 months. How can I just do that? And it was, the lesson was, you can still get better, or at the very least maintain the thing without doing the thing.
For sure.
And I think that is important for athletes to know as they're navigating these tweaks that are going to happen in your career. Something that I think we did well together was, I didn't really catastrophize that situation. I think part of that was I tore my other labrum before, so I know like there is light on the other side. So I had that perspective. But when you have injuries or tweaks, it's really easy to think of it as like
world ending.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Or like, I'm going to take so many steps backwards. It's going to take me forever to get back to where I was. And you get depressed, and you get like your training. It's easy for your training to lose that fire. But if you can not take that perspective and just trust us when we say you can get better at the thing without doing the thing, then you can still enjoy your training and look forward to the progress that's going to come out on the other side. And also, I think my ring muscle ups were set up to be like, the volume I could handle once we built them back up was so much higher than before. Like I wouldn't feel like tight in my shoulders. I wouldn't like get super sore from it. All that bodybuilding work that we did was game changing for me,
for sure,
as a like upper body limited athlete.
Yeah. I think like two things I was thinking about as you were talking, was your skill level was already so high that there was no limitation in like the actual skill of a muscle up. So it wasn't like we were coming back from the shoulder injury and then we had to spend time like learning the skill. Like you already had we'll call mastery in the skill itself. So for us, it was like, okay, well, how do we make the position stronger and more resilient to the forces that you have to be able to handle? And I think that we just did a good job. I think partially that is like a communication thing between you and I, or between me and any athlete that I work with. It's like trying to figure out where we can make common ground on and then build on top of that. The second thing I was starting to think about was, like you said, like you didn't catastrophize during the process. Was there things that you did specifically to not have that? Or were there things that I did that kind of like made you feel like, okay, like we are going forward and I don't have to like be so, I don't know, depressed or negative about like my situation and like the lack of things I can't do right now?
I mean, I think a big part of it was my prior experience, was knowing that like I had been through a big injury before and come out of it. But I also think that you, in your rehab, you were very progressive. Like I didn't feel like I was stuck, and we were always taking baby steps. Like nothing was huge. But I also didn't expect like to take these big jumps. And also I was very cautious. Like if something felt off, I would still like be like, okay, let's not go there yet. Let's spend another couple weeks on this progression. But having your confidence that like it was going to be okay and we were going to build towards that, then I think like that helped a lot. And then I also had the perspective of like, I don't have any other choice. Like this is what I have to do in order to get better at the sport. And it's not what I want to do, but like that's athletics, you know? So I think that's another thing that athletes should kind of keep in mind. Like if you're calling yourself an athlete, you have to be an athlete when it's not going your way. And
so that situation seems like it's probably the anomaly where you had the prior experience and you bought into the process. What is kind of the typical case and how does that play out?
Well, I was just about to say, you were talking about you were an athlete. You were going to do whatever was required of you to like be that athlete. And I think for most people, they have a hard time with that mentality. And I don't know why, because obviously they all come into the sport with goals.
Most people come in with athletic backgrounds.
Sure, yeah, right. And the goal doesn't have to be like elite level. Like maybe it's become an RX athlete, or maybe it's to do your first intermediate comp. So everyone has like this goal, and they know that like the quest is an athletic quest. But some of them, when they meet this injury, kind of like this injury process, they get angry about the things that they have to do in order to get back to the things that they want to do. And that's a good question, Chris. Like, how do you help them navigate that?
Well, actually, I don't want to know, we can get to that as well, but I want to know like when someone doesn't have the right attitude and they kind of skirt the steps that actually helped Mia, what does that end up looking like? And what are the pitfalls they fall into in potentially regressing back or stalling progress? Yeah,
the most common thing is that people want to test it early, like too soon. So let's just say Mia, the shoulder injury happens. She knows ring muscle ups are the weakness, and she knows like, hey, I need to work on ring muscle ups if I want to be at the level of sport that I want to be at. And let's just say like we get a month in and things just feel generally good. And she's like, all right, well, I'm just going to go in and test this ring muscle up. And then she doesn't test it. And then it kind of sets her back. And then she goes, okay, no, we're not there yet. We do the rehab process again. And then like 2 weeks later, she's like, I'm just going to test my ring muscle up. And she keeps doing this process over and over again. And she continues to irritate the tissue or bother her shoulder where like she can't do the things that are then necessary. I think that's the more common thing that I see from people, is that they rush getting back to whatever the thing is that they're trying to get to, without like a clear delineation of like taking steps. Like you said, we took really small baby steps, but they were always kind of like this continual progress thing. And sometimes it like doesn't mean that the exercise itself changed. Maybe like the loading changed, or maybe the rep range changed, or maybe it was just like, do this thing again because like you just need exposure to this thing. But what our goal was to prove to you before you got to the thing that you could do it. So when you jumped up for the muscle up and you did a set of 8 unbroken, you were like, yeah, that was good. And I had confidence doing that. I think people miss that. They're like, let's just say like they hurt their quad and they're like, oh, I can't squat. Well, I got to get back to squatting because like I'm not strong. So they continually try to like force themselves down this rabbit hole instead of trying to find ways to build small bridges to get back to that movement that makes them confident when they go back to squatting that they can actually go right to squatting.
I feel like I sympathize with that because I think especially for a lot of these weekend warrior types who aren't full-time athletes, the thing that got them into the CrossFit was the CrossFit was, this is like a fun part of their day. They're at their desk all day, and like, now I get to go do my fun hobby.
Yeah.
And then when the hobby is, now is like go in and do whatever accessory baby step type thing. It's like, that's not, getting them excited after a long day of work. Mm-hmm. So like, what advice would you have for someone who has that kind of mindset?
For like the hobbyists, or like, let's even just say like the normal average class goer who, is at their job all day, and then they're coming in for like that 1 hour class, and let's just say like their shoulder starts to bother them. I would ask them to like try to find things that are still fun and engaging for them to work on, because CrossFit has so many things that like you could find enjoyment in getting better at something else that doesn't involve the shoulder. But if you're continually like pushing yourself down this hole, I think all you're trying to do is like set yourself up for failure at some point. Mm-hmm. And I would ask like talk to the coaches who run the classes, ask them for modifications, ask them like, what are some goals that I can set within these sessions so that when I do come to class, I don't feel like I'm getting left behind, or I'm not having fun, or I'm not like doing a good job because I'm not RXing the workout. I would try to find ways to keep the engagement alive for that person. And I don't know what that is for that individual person, but like talk to the coaches at the gym and like seek out their help so that you can actually continue to go forward and not just feel like you're just like spinning your wheels and like not getting better. Because unfortunately the sport, even from like the class aspect, just demands a lot from the body. So like if your body's feeling beat up all the time, like it's going to be very hard to want to come back to the gym, especially if like that's the thing that you enjoy.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to just accept that the reality of doing RX workouts that include higher level gymnastics, and I'm not even necessarily talking about muscle ups like handstand push-ups or kipping pull-ups, you have to have a level of strength to do that. And I understand that like, that's like building that is not the fun part, but it's just reality. Yeah. Like there's no way around that. So if you are a hobbyist and you are getting injured for a certain movement, I do think you need to like look at yourself and be like, do I have the strength foundations for this? And if the answer is no, or I'm not sure, ask someone. And then if the answer is no, you have to like have an honest conversation with yourself. One, I'm going to build that, and I'm just going to commit to building it because I want to be able to do this movement, or just don't do that movement. But if you keep just trying to do the movement because it's fun and you want to RX something, you're probably just going to keep getting hurt. And I think eventually you're probably not going to like CrossFit anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
So the example that y'all just gave with Mia's shoulder, that was an injury, right?
Yep.
Yeah, it was a tweak turned injury.
Tweak turned injury. Was there a point there that you could have prevented it?
Probably.
You just didn't know it existed, or what?
Yeah. So I had like a weird ache pain in my tricep / lat for a while before that I would have classified as a tweak.
Yep.
It only hurt in vertical pulling, like strict pull-ups, or if I did like a kipping pull-up, not a butterfly. But we were leading into like getting ready for the open. I was on a team, and that's like my pitfall. Like if I'm on a team, I'm like, take my body. Like I'm here for you no matter what. And I continued to push through that while still like we definitely like avoided some things, but like the warning signs were there. It was at a tough time of the season where I decided that I was going to continue to push through that and make it happen.
So in Kyle's example of don't push past the 3, at this point you're like, hey, I'm past the 3, but it's go time. I'm on this team. I don't want to let them down. I'm going to do it.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Nailed it.
So you knew you were in the danger zone.
For sure. Yeah. And then I ended up tearing my labrum and my rotator cuff, which I didn't know at the time, but I knew I'd done something. Like it was on
a rope climb, right?
No, it was a jerk.
Oh, a jerk.
Remember?
Oh, yes. You sent me the video.
And then I called you. I was like, hey, I can't lift my arm.
I remember I was already driving to the gym and I got a text message with a video. I think I did something to my shoulder.
But after that, and I mean, it's all circumstantial, of course. Like I took the next season off, so I didn't have competitions that I had to be ready for. And the competitions that I was doing were individual competitions. So for me, it's a lot easier to be like, I'm going to pull back on this if it doesn't feel good because it's just me. But I was a lot more careful then navigating. Like I had like a wrist tweak that happened one day. I was just like, hey, my wrist hurts. Cool. And then it hurt for like 4 months.
Yes, I remember
but
that.
we were very careful with that, right? Like I remember doing strict handstand push-ups on dumbbells forever, which are so hard.
Yeah. Like we had a handstand walk, and then you did Monster Games, and the qualifier had handstand walking in it. And it was just like, all right, well, we haven't done this in 3 months. We're just going to see how your endurance held up for all this time.
But we did a lot of things to preserve it. We just stayed out of that wrist extension.
Yeah. Then the foot.
And then after that, I got plantar fasciitis in my foot, which I think is my least favorite tweak / injury of all time because it lasted forever.
It lingers for a long time.
Forever. And when it flares up, it hurts so bad. Like it was way more painful than a torn labrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one, excuse me, like I didn't do double unders for like almost a year, you know? So it's just part of it.
Well, let's switch to talking about tweaks then. So if you said that was an injury, you were definitely purposely putting yourself in the danger zone. Now let's circle back and talk about not doing that and the appropriate steps. One of the questions I thought of from earlier is you had mentioned, Kyle, that, you know, if you have your seasons coming up, like in this example, she was about to do semifinals, you got to make that decision. Like, hey, am I going to, you know, push past my limits and accept my fate if something bad happens? I think a lot of the people who listen to this podcast are probably more in the, you know, they might do a Fittest of the Coast or a Wadapalooza type event. And, you know, it's not like semifinals or the games. Is there anything to be said about even at that level, maybe saying, oh, I'm going to wait and skip and do the next one? Or is it like, you know, because I'm not trying to like diminish their long-term goal, which is one of those comps.
For sure.
I'm not saying it's any lesser. That's just the level they're at.
Yeah.
But is there something to be said of maybe like not risking it for something at that level?
Yeah. So
did that make any sense?
No, it did. I agree. So one, I agree. Like just because they're not going to like a semifinal or the CrossFit Games doesn't make like that thing less. It's an
awesome goal for them.
It's a great goal for them. I have lots of athletes who do those comps.
Those comps are hard to get into.
Those comps are hard to get into, and like that becomes like their season. You know what I mean? Like they work up towards that thing. The only caveat I think to a Fittest of the Coast or a Wadapalooza that is different than like the game season is that there are more options for people to do those off-season comps than there is for like a semifinal or a games event, right? So it's like we can even just use Fittest of the Coast. Let's just say because the qualifier is happening right now. It's like, okay, well, you get a tweak and it's like, I don't know, like maybe I could do it, but if I push past my limits, maybe I actually end up hurting myself and then I'm out for multiple months in a row. So it's like, let's just pull back and like, let's just look for a different off-season comp that we can do. Maybe it's not as big as Fittest of the Coast, but at least you can then anchor yourself to something and like still have worth or importance into your training that doesn't actually set you back so far that you're like, okay, well now I have to go through this rebuild process and in order to get back to like the current level that I'm at. And I know it's harder said than done because some people are like, well, I really want to do Fittest of the Coast. And then for that person, that's just a conversation with you and your coach or you and whoever you work with, or really like if it's just you and you're like making that call for yourself, it's like really like writing out like the pros and cons list of like, well, how much importance does this comp hold for me versus the risk of injury or the risk of consequences that could happen if I start to push through this tweak. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's going to be different for each person. But I think the only thing that I would lean towards is that there are way more off-season comps than there are for like the game season, which is like it's like a one and done shot. Like you either show up and compete that weekend or you don't at all.
Yeah. For that level of competition, like Fittest of the Coast, Wadapalooza, Monster Games, Desert City Classic.
Yeah, all those ones.
Atlantic City. That's not what it's called.
ACC?
Is that Atlantic City Classic?
Yeah, I think so.
We get it.
Yeah. And I'm just giving them options. I'd say about every 3 to 4 months, you have one of those as an option, which is a good amount of time to come out of a tweak.
Yep.
So I think, being a little flexible with that is important.
Yeah.
And I've done that in like the CrossFit competition.
Yeah.
Or the CrossFit Games competition season. Take it away, Chris.
Crushed that.
All right. So in y'all's coaching experience, when someone as a coach comes to you and says, hey, I'm feeling tweaky, and they do have that competition on the horizon, more often than not, do they back up or do they continue?
That's a great question. I feel like in my experience, most people continue forward. It's hard.
I agree.
Yeah. I think it's just hard for people.
How does it play out? If most people continue forward, how does it play out?
Well, so competing through a tweak isn't always the worst thing ever. Like, you might not compete as well. It might cause the tweak to last longer. Maybe, depending on what's going on, it could turn into like a true injury. But like, for example, when I did crash last year, individual masters, I had that plantar thing going on, and they had drag rope double unders, which is like the absolute worst thing that could happen. I did it anyways, and it like totally flared my foot up. It felt awful. Like, that workout felt terrible. I wanted to cry during it, but it didn't necessarily make anything worse. You know, like I still, like, the tweak still existed. Did it prolong it going away? I don't know. Like, I don't know how you could tell that, but sometimes, like, it's okay. You just have to, like, I knew doing that like it was going to hurt to walk for a few days. For sure. And that's like I take responsibility for what I did to myself there.
Yeah.
So I think knowing that as you're going into it, and also like what the tweak is, because something like that, like plantar fasciitis, it's probably like I'm not going to cause something like catastrophical if I push through that. If I have like something going on in my shoulder, like I did the first time, and then I'm like doing a ton of muscle ups, legless rope climbs, heavy jerks, and then I'm like, oh, now I tore my labrum. Like, that's different. You know, that is an MRI, that is possibly surgery. Thankfully, I didn't have to do that, but then a lot of PT and a lot of time. So not all tweaks are created equally.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you?
I also don't. Yeah, tweaks also don't lead to this injury, right? I have an athlete right now doing the Fist of the Coast qualifier who has a reoccurring back tweak, we'll call it, and it's been really good for the last, I don't even know, maybe 4, 5, 6 months, and then of course, last week tweaks her back, and like now we have to like make a decision, like what are we doing in the between time from the last qualifier workout into the next workout, and for her specifically, like we pulled back on pulling off the floor and any heavy like back squatting. We've gone a little bit more upper body. We're doing a lot of lower body rehab or low level movements, like whatever you want to call them. We're trying to do a little bit more cyclical work just to kind of like keep her feeling good, because those things like still feel good. And like if she can have a little bit better of mindset, or like even feels confident with her body, like she can go in more positively to the next workout, regardless of what it is. For her specifically, it's just like, there's probably going to be some pulling from the floor or like something like it's a little bit heavier because they just haven't done it yet. And like, we're going to have a conversation about like the risk versus reward. Now, knowing who she is and she's a competitor, like she's going to go through it. We just might not go through it like right when the workout comes out. It might be like, hey, we're going to push this out until next Wednesday to try to give you as much time as possible that you feel the best as you can feel, instead of being like, well, you're at like 70%, like let's just like, roll the dice on it.
So when people have pushed through, they know that they have the tweak and they say, screw it, I'm going to do what I have on the schedule. How often, from y'all's personal experience, has the juice been worth the squeeze?
Man, that's hard.
Yeah, that's
it's
a tough
like
question.
It's such person specific. I don't know, man. I feel like I could almost go 50-50 on it, where like some people like push through and they're like, oh yeah, like it was completely fine and didn't bother me and I'm glad that I did it. And then I have other people who push through and they just like reach a point where, not necessarily like a breaking point, but they like, it just exacerbates like the problem. And they're like, man, I don't know. Like now I gotta take 2 months to kind of like rebuild these things or even just like feel good. It's not an easy answer. It's not a clear like yes or no. And I wish I could give more concrete answers and be like, hey, if this, then that. But I think that's just very unrealistic. Like, I'm going to try not to get too sciencey here, but like we are complex adaptive systems, just means like an input into us. So whatever that input is, qualifier, stress, loading parameters, specific movements, volume requirements, it doesn't mean that there's a one-to-one output. So you're going to put something into our system, so into the person, into the programming, and you don't necessarily know what the result will be until you get the result. And then you can look back in hindsight and be like, okay, like this was a good decision or this wasn't a good decision. I wish I could give a better answer, but like, that's just the way that it is. It's unfortunate.
And it's so like life dependent, because if I look back at my shoulder tweak that I pushed into an injury, I wouldn't change that. Like to me, the experience I had that season with my team was worth it.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was something that was important enough to me to take the risk. Now, say I had that exact situation fast forwarded like 3 years from now, and say I have a child or something, that might be a different thing. Like I could say, you know, the financial risks of an injury like that, the way it would limit me to be able to do some things that I need to do at home, just make it not worth it anymore. Yeah. So it's very dependent. I think it's more so dependent on what your priorities are in your life, and versus like if it's going to turn into an injury or not, because it's kind of like a crapshoot. Like, you know, you don't know. It easily could, and it easily could not. And it's hard to predict that. So I think being honest with yourself, like what could this lead to? And if that happens, am I okay with that?
Yeah.
And with dealing with the consequences of that. Because for me, I was okay. Like, of course I would have preferred to not be injured, sure. But like I never through that injury rehab was I like pissed. Yeah. You know, I was like, this is what I chose. Yeah. And I like, sure, I would prefer to not be doing this, but I wouldn't take away like that season that I had. Because for me, that was the priority of what I was doing.
So you said it's about 50-50, you know, the juice being worth the squeeze. So knowing that, what would your general recommendation be? To push through it or to pull back? If you know, gun to head, you have to decide, what are you leaning towards?
I think if you have another option for a competition that would be equally as fulfilling for you, even if it's 6 months down the road or, you know, a little different than you had anticipated, but you can look at it and think like that's still going to give me just as much fulfillment and happiness and like feeling proud of myself, then I would not push through it. Yeah. I think if you're in a situation where like one that I was in, or if it's like a kind of maybe like a once in a lifetime opportunity and it's important enough to you, then I would go for it.
Yeah.
And that's already like having suffered the consequences of going for it.
Yeah. I have two answers. One is by nature of who I am, I'm a little bit more conservative with my athletes. So I'd probably err to the side of caution. I guess if I had to be like, what's my first like line of answer? It would be err to the side of caution and just be smart and protect your body, because if we're going to do the sport for a long time, you have to be able to like withstand the volume and the stresses of the sport. So if you're constantly like getting tweaked, which leads to an injury, and we're taking steps backwards, you're not helping us in the grand scheme of things. The other side of my answer is that as people get closer to competition or things that are important to them, not everybody, but a lot of people naturally just start to get a little tweaky. Stress goes up, like life stress, sleeping gets a little bit worse. Maybe food gets disrupted, training schedule and rhythm of life is a little off. So they start to feel things that aren't necessarily, I don't want to say real, because everything is real, right? If you feel something that's real, but it's not a thing to be like, don't do it. I have had plenty of experiences where people are like, man, like my back, my shoulder, my knee are bothering me. They get through the competition, or they get to the competition, or they get through the qualifier, and all of a sudden that thing that was bothering them is completely gone. It's not even a question, and they turn it off and they just compete really, really well. So I know you like want an answer from me, and I know that like this is annoying that I'm not giving a good one, but I think like there's times where you have to be smart and play the conservative method and conservative route, especially if you have a long-term goal. Like, you know, if you're trying to be a games athlete and you're like, okay, well, I'm 5 years away from doing that. Like, you got to know, like, it's a 5-year process, and there's no reason to get hurt now if your process is 5 years. But there's also plenty of times where I've had athletes feel tweaks and then show up to the competition, and that tweak is just magically gone. And there's just something about like the influx of stress and like the anxiety surrounding like what does that competition mean for that person and how that affects their body, that once they get there, they can turn it off or it completely goes away, because now they're just in competition mode and they're there to do the thing that they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm. And if you are navigating something like this for the first time and you just have to choose one way or another, pay attention to what happens, right? Yeah. Because that's we keep saying it's very individualized, but what happened, how you react to it is important to know. So then you can make an informed decision the next time you get a tweak, which will probably happen if you're continuing to pursue competitive CrossFit.
For sure. Experience is just like a great teacher.
Yeah.
I think on one side, so on Mia's side, where you have a tweak that was actually leading to, doom, you also have people who
wasn't doomed.
Well, you were getting there. You also have people though who have like tweaks or what they think is a tweak, and they over analyze it, and it's probably something super small.
Yeah.
And so what are like some of the most big misconceptions about a tweak? Like, or the things that come up a lot when y'all are coaching, when people bring up a tweak, like what are they saying? What is the common thing they come to you with?
Yeah.
And how do they view it? And
I think most often it's like a catastrophizing of what's happening to their body, which I don't blame someone for. Like if something doesn't feel good and all of a sudden, like something felt good and all of a sudden it doesn't feel good and you're like, whoa, like what's going on? Like, what am I doing? I can understand like the initial reaction is like a little bit of panic. Like, oh my God, like we need to pull back and strip away everything. I guess like my like thought about that is, one is that it normally opens the door for a conversation between me and that person. Obviously the people that work with me know that I'm a physical therapist. So they kind of come to me with this already like, well, he can help me get better regardless of what happens, which may or may not be true. I try my best. But I think it opens the door for the conversation where we can start to be like, okay, like, well, is this a tweak? Is this an injury? Is this something that's just like off because of this day? Like, what was your life stress like? Did you sleep well last night? Are we actually purposely overloading something that is important to your athletic development that maybe we just need to pull back on and you're going to feel good like tomorrow or the next day? So for the person who's experiencing this for the first time, I think it's like you kind of have to look inward a little bit and not just go straight to panic. It's like, okay, hey, think about what you just did in this session. Kind of take a big overview of like your life and your week and your training progress right now. And like, let's just be a little bit more analytical instead of like living in our feelings, which is okay to do sometimes. But like, if it leads you down this dark road, like we don't need that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it's easy to be super reactive and panicky to a tweak. And I like, even though I've been through so many, every time something happens, I'm like, oh no, you know, like, cause you don't know, like
for sure.
But I would say first thing, give yourself like 3 days. And before like, cause there's nothing you can do about it right then. For right. Sure. Like I remember you saying that, when I hurt my shoulder, you're like, we can't do anything about it right now. Like it's too pissed off. So just like give it a few days and then we'll see what it is. And I mean, in that situation, it did not get better, but there's been other situations where in a few days, it feels a lot better. Yeah. Like maybe not completely gone, but to the point where like you have your range of motion, you can get into a lot of positions, and then you can kind of analyze like, all right, what is hurting? When is it hurting? How can I like kind of navigate that? Can I, for instance, like with my like wrist tweak that I had for a few months. All right, I can't get into a front rack, but, or I can't get into a handstand, but I really need to work on strict handstand push-ups. That's okay. Like we can do dumbbell strict press. We can do handstand push-ups on parallettes. We can still address all of these things while just staying out of that pain for a little bit. So give yourselves a few days and try to calm. I know it's so much harder or so much easier said than done, because every time it happens to me, I'm like, no.
Yeah. And it's not take like rest too. Cause like, I think when people like get a tweak,
right,
there is a period of like, hey, give yourself a moment to kind of like actually feel what this is and not just like go straight to panic mode, but start to address it in some fashion, right? You don't want to just like let it go and just let it be by itself. Resting normally, unless you like strain a muscle in the initial phase and we need to actually rest it, it's like most of the time it needs a little bit of load or it needs a little bit of like movement to actually start to make it feel better. So
okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
What's the most common tweak
in CrossFit?
Yep.
It's either a shoulder or a low back.
All right, let's go. Since we've talked shoulder, let's go low back. Yeah. All right, so I just got a low back tweak. I'm freaking out a little bit.
Yeah.
Now let's go through what you're talking about, but if I had the low back.
Yeah.
So what are the things I'm doing?
Yeah, I think immediately we're going to try to get you to so let's say you have a low back tweak. The first thing that I'm thinking about is what can we do in the moment to kind of just like relax tension? So most of the time, what I'll have people do is like put their feet up on a box and do some box breathing, because your reaction to an injury or a tweak is like a sympathetic response. So that basically just means like you put yourself into fight or flight, and like you start to like panic and
That's when you go, no.
Yeah. You're doing the no. What's happening? If we can kind of get you to bring yourself back down into like a more parasympathetic state and relax some of like the muscle tone, we can probably actually get you to like at least not feel completely better, but at least like take away some of that initial shock and like sharpness. After that, to me,
hold on, let me pause you real quick. So usually what I've seen in the years of being around CrossFit, someone gets that tweak, and what they do immediately is they go and just put themselves in all these different positions trying to feel it out. Yeah. Is that opposite of what you're saying? Is that bad? They sit there and they go through all these range of motions trying to figure out what's causing it.
I don't think that's bad per se. I'm always gonna err to like movement is better than not movement. So if that's what they need to do, the only caveat to that is like if you're doing this repetitive motion thing and you're like, oh, like that's the movement that bothers it, and you're kind of just like constantly poking at it, I don't think that's actually helping you kind of like come back or relax the tension. To me, it's like on the initial feel, like we want to try to like almost like relax the body a little bit just to make sure that you feel comfortable walking and moving and being a human being. Because normally what happens in my experience is that people get a back tweak and they start to guard and they start to take movement away. So instead of like them being able to move normally, they start to restrict their movement more and more and more. So to me, it's like, can we get them to relax a little bit so that when they actually go to move, they can move as normal as humanly possible. And then from that point, then it's trying to give them little things to kind of like overcome that. But for me, the first thing is like something that's a little bit more relaxing than not.
And what does that look like after that?
After that initial thing?
Yeah, what are the next things?
So the next things after trying to get them to kind of relax, let's just say like it's the next day, we're going to find positions that we can load that take stress off the lower back so that we can basically share stress more appropriately, because the lower back is probably up most of the time. The lower back is probably taking on more stress or is using stress to guard the tissue in certain positions. So it's like, okay, can we load your hamstrings? Can we load your quads? Can we load your glutes? Can we do some like hip mobility things that kind of will take some of the stress away to give you back movement or range of motion?
And is this done like process of elimination style?
Yeah, a little bit. It's more specific to the person, and like if a specific movement is bothering them, let's just say like it's flexion or bending over and touching their toes. It's like, okay, well, we need to at least give you some flexion back because you need to be able to sit down in a car. You need to get off a car seat, like whatever. Like you need flexion in your life. You can't just like be stuck in extension. So, or even putting your shoes on, for example. So it's like, okay, we're trying to get that back. It's like, well, what can we do that are really low level that feels safe and appropriate? So maybe that starts off with laying on the ground and doing pelvic tilts, which just means that you're just rotating your hips back and forth because you're just trying to give your hips to know that, hey, I can flex. It's okay to flex. And then from there, start to load hamstrings, start to load quads a little bit. And
when you say load, what are we talking?
I'm like body weight load. I don't mean like we're grabbing a barbell. So like doing more of an isometric position. And in those positions, what I would try to have them do, again, if they're limited in flexion or flexion is the bothersome pattern, I would actually try to have them posterior tilt or roll their pelvis or flex their pelvis. Yeah, I was making sure I said that right. In that position. So like, let's just say like they're doing a hamstring bridge. I'd actually have them roll their pelvis backwards first, then load the hamstring bridge. That way the spine and the hips are experiencing a moment of flexion, which is the position that's intolerant right now to load. And then that's kind of how I would go through my thought process of trying to get them back to feeling okay and feeling like they can move confidently.
So you'll do those baby steps, and then how many days of that until you try to push forward?
I mean, that really depends on the person and how like bad,
how it progresses.
Yeah, how bad the back tweak is. It's hard to say like specifically, like let's just say like it's just a really low level, really easy thing. They might be completely fine in a week, you know, or less than a week. Like they might like next week, they might like walk into the gym and be like, oh, nothing's wrong with me. But I've also had people where it's on the opposite side of the spectrum where like, you know, it was really bad for a really long time and it took a month or two to kind of like just feel normal again. It's just hard. It's hard to say. It's more specific to the person and the situation.
Something that you have prescribed for me a lot that I now prescribe to other athletes a lot, because I think it's something, and I bring it up because I think it's something that people who don't have coaches or don't have someone to tell them what to do can pretty easily use, is the long duration isometrics, like low
load,
low load isometrics.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk through like some common tweaks and how like what you would do for that.
Sure.
Like, so an elbow.
Yeah.
So I feel like we see that a lot in CrossFit.
Yeah, especially with people who are trying to do legless rope climbs
Yeah.
or getting like more accustomed to chest to bar pull-up volume. Like their elbow, their medial side of their elbow or the inside of their elbow starts to flare up really bad. So things that I'll do for that specifically, let's just say it's a legless rope climb incident that has pissed off an elbow. What I'll do is put them in the legless rope climb position. So in that kind of like one arm's at the chest and one hand is above like kind of at eye level with their feet on the floor, and they're using as much of their body weight as they need to, but they're trying to accumulate time, like 2 to 3 minutes in that position, and they're gripping the rope as hard as they feel comfortable doing, which again is somewhere in that 3 to 10 range that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and you would always say like something you can hold for 45 seconds.
Yeah.
So whatever you feel as you're doing that within your pain range, like stay below that 3 out of 10. It's like you're trying to pull the rope down from the ceiling
with your feet on the floor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And you'll feel it. Like you'll feel the tension and hold that for 45 seconds
and then
2 to 3 sets.
2 to 3 sets. And then try to progress it over time. And then the thing that you would do, right, is one, increase time first, and then you would try to take some of your body weight away over time. And that can help to simulate. That's like one of those low load, long duration iso holds that can help simulate one. It can take some of the pain signaling away because there's a endogenous opioid response. Basically just means that like it reduces some of the pain signaling, but also the load starts to help the tendon in this case heal or get stronger. I don't know if heal is the correct word, but like get stronger and more tolerant to forces.
What version would you do for a low back?
So this depends on what the person is experiencing, but the thing I reach for first with most people, because in a low back situation, it's more of a guarding where they're not allowing movement to occur. So for them, what I normally would start with is a double leg hamstring foam roller bridge. So I have a video.
Those are hard.
Yeah, they're hard. So if you go to my YouTube, you can like search this or go find David Gray and you can look for his videos. But anyway, there's a foam roller. Your forefoot is on the foam roller. You are going to posterior tilt your pelvis. So this means roll your pelvis back to the floor, and then your back is flat with the ground. You're going to calf raise slightly, and then you're going to push up and hold your hips like a hand width distance off the ground. Your goal is to load your hamstrings and your calves while trying to relax your lower back. So there should be no tension in your lower back. You should be able to breathe really smoothly. And then you're going to try to hold for 30 to 40 seconds and then do that for a couple sets. That movement is very hard. It's deceptively hard. But the idea there is not necessarily to load the lower back, but it's to take stress away. Now, again, depending on the person and the thing, you might actually need to lower their lower back. And if we're doing that, then it's just like we're going to do a GHD swords and hold. And we're going to start there. And maybe we regress it with like more hips on the pad. And then we kind of like progress you with taking hips off the pad. But that's going to be really person dependent, because if the person is already like for a low back specifically, if they're already taking movement away, you don't want to add more tension on top of tension. You want to try to reduce the tension so that they can do something with their movement.
So that's like, is that specific to just back? You would take that approach and then everything else is.
Yeah, I think most common with backs, they end up guarding.
Right.
A lot.
What about like a knee?
Yeah. With a knee, let's just say it's like a patella tendon or a quad tendon thing.
Pistolitis.
Yeah, pistolitis. I think the easiest thing to do, honestly, is a wall sit. And I know it's super basic, but sit in a wall sit and try to accumulate 3 minutes in some fashion and probably start above 90 degrees, so above like a parallel squat. And just try to get the quad to take on some load and let the knee take on some load. And I would start with double leg. It's probably going to feel super basic, but if you're experiencing anterior knee pain or front of the knee pain, and it's been bothering you for a while, even doing that might just give you a little bit of relief where you're like, oh, I can go do something that's a little bit more higher level that can actually then start to help push the needle forward.
Are there any other common ones that just come to you?
Like even for your shoulder, like we did a bunch of them. But I think one of the bigger ones that we did a lot was like we would start with like some external rotation walkout and try to hold for 30 to 40 seconds. And then we would take that and go into other movements that were helping get back to pressing.
Those are banded.
Yeah, those were banded to start with. And then I think we ended up loading them with like kettlebells and stuff.
So what would be the wrong way to do this? Like what's the number one thing they could do to mess up during this time?
A tweak or like?
Yeah, for a tweak.
Do you mean like what's the wrong thing to do in terms of?
So
like,
this is the correct way.
Yeah.
Do it this way. What would be the thing that people often you've seen them do, and you're like, oh, whoa, not that.
I think go straight to the full movement.
Yeah, just
again.
I think like ignore it.
Even if like say your knee's bothering you and you're just doing like air squats, like I would take the step of these isometrics first before going.
I think most often what people will do is that they'll rest, and they'll say like, I'll rest for a week or two. I literally just had this conversation with someone in class, which is why I'm bringing this up, that they'll rest for like a week or two, and then they'll just come back and they'll just try to throw their training exactly as it was back in. And sometimes that can work, but other times, and most often, it doesn't play out well like that. Like something bothered you, you took it away, and then you tried to bring it back without taking like some introductory step. It probably ends up bothering you again. And that's not the case all the time. So I just want to make sure I make that, I say that. But most of the time, what I see from people is like, it's like whatever, like ring muscle ups bother you, you took them away, then you put ring muscle ups back. It's like, oh, it still bothers me. It's like, okay, well, we got to do something instead of just jumping right back to the thing that hurt you.
What's a way, again, for someone who doesn't have guidance, just like a basic rule of thumb on how to do that? Would it be like a strength support for that movement, or like a bodybuilding approach to it?
Yeah. Like, how do they know that they can go back to the movement?
No, how do they build what they're doing in between?
Yeah. I think for most people, probably taking some bodybuilding approach. I think that's like the easiest thing for people to like anchor themselves to or understand. Because I think most people like get bodybuilding in some fashion. They don't need to know like the exact nuances of like how to build muscle or what's appropriate or not. But I think they understand like, okay, like I do a little bit higher reps. I do some lower weights. I try to like maybe do some partial range of motion movements. And I think if they can start to like use that as like their building block, and then they can put things on top of it, like I think they'll be better off.
So if we're going to build like, you're going to hate this, like a structure for the random person that we have no detail on that how to tweak, and they want to get back to their movement, they're going to start off with a 3 by 45 second isometrics. And they're going to build that until when? General concept.
Yeah. I mean,
it could be number of days.
Yeah.
Super caveat. Kyle hates this.
Kyle hates
he doesn't want to
so
do
much.
it, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah. Okay. So
I'm gonna get
let's just say
lectured after this.
Okay, that's fine. So they start with like a 3 by 45 second hold. Your goal, I think, would be to take the hardest isometric that you can do. So let's just say it's the wall sit, right? The person with anterior knee pain, they're doing a wall sit. It's like, okay, well, what's the hardest variation of this exercise that will challenge that leg the most without it being a dynamic movement, obviously, because if you pistolitis, a pistol is the hardest movement that you're going to do, right? So without it being a pistol, what can you do? It's like, okay, well, it's some single leg variation of this exercise.
It's like a single leg wall sit.
Single leg wall sit. Those are hard. They're hard. They are very hard. So it's like, what are the steps in order to get from like, I can't do a single leg wall sit at all because the moment I do it, it bothers my knee, to I'm starting with a double leg 45 second. Well, it's like, okay, well, you probably progress time first, then you probably turn it into a kickstand. Maybe you're doing like a split squat along with this, and then you're trying to input some single leg wall sits. And then from there, it becomes dynamic.
So then once you can do a single leg wall sit, probably not 40 seconds, right? That's a long time.
That's a long time.
Maybe like a 20 second.
30 second, maybe.
Okay. Then you have graduated, congratulations, and now you're in your bodybuilding phase where you're going to isolate the muscles, whatever's going on. I'd say, I'm taking over here, so tell me if I'm wrong. If you're doing a gymnastics movement, you're also doing some like positional holds there, right? Like if it is a ring muscle up, you're doing some bottom of the dip holds.
I think that's true of all movements though, because I think you can take any movement. Let's even say a squat, because the person's knee is bothering them. Like we can do yielding isometrics, which is just like sustaining a position against load. Shout out to the strength course. You can do yielding isometrics as a way to kind of bridge the gap between not doing the movement and then doing the movement. So
we go unloaded isometric, bodybuilding,
plus yielding.
Okay, those are together.
Yep.
Okay. And then you're free?
Give me an example of the yielding isometric for the squat.
For a squat, so it would be like a 1/4 back squat. So from the top, you'd go down 1/4. So like a power position and like a clean or a snatch. Bars loaded, and it's loaded as heavy as you can, and you're trying to maintain that position for 30 seconds. Simple.
And when you say heavy as you can, you mean as heavy as the
tissues can allow.
Tissues
Where you
will allow
stay
it.
below a 3 out of 10
Yeah,
pain.
exactly.
There you go. That's what I wanted to hear.
Always 3 out of 10 is your limit.
Yeah.
And let's say, what, 3 sets of that?
3 sets. Yeah.
Okay. And when you can do that,
Yeah. When you can do that, plus like the bodybuilding that you're doing alongside of it, it's like, okay, your tissues are like, you'll know, like you're just going to walk, like you're going to walk into some of those sessions and you're going to be like, man, I'm feeling better. It's like, okay, well, we can re-input dynamic movement. Now dynamic movement, and again, these are not like hard definitive lines. Like there's going to be some like overlap with them. I know.
no, these are the rules. We're giving them a
Don't
blueprint.
say that. But then you're going to add dynamic movement in, and maybe dynamic movement is like a deep tier plyo. If you don't know what deep tier plyos are, that's like a more relaxed, full range of motion, like bottom of the squat jump or a squat jump, where you're trying to like take off on the ground and you're trying to low as you can, and then you're trying to take off again. But it's not for like speed; it's more for like building positions.
Could they look at that as like a dynamic lower level or lower level version of the skill? So
Yes.
like for a back squat, it would be that. For a ring muscle up, maybe it's like a low ring transition.
Yeah.
Where you start off landing with your toes on the ground, and then you get to the point where you're supporting your full body weight.
Yeah.
And then are you free after that? Nope.
Yeah.
Never free.
Maybe is the answer. I think you need something along the way that proves to you that you can do it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it might just be doing the movement itself, right? It's like, okay, well, I can do all these things. I can do this deep tier plyo thing. I walk in and I'm just going to put the bar on my back and like see how it feels. You may need an intermediate step where maybe it's a little bit like heel elevated. You're doing a cyclist squat, or you got to do split squats for a little bit longer, or something to that effect. Or maybe it's just box squats because you can't handle the full range of motion, but you can at least hit like parallel or depth, I guess. But that's when you just get a little bit nuanced. But yeah, like after that step where you kind of like prove to yourself that you can handle some dynamic movements in a more controlled setting, then yeah, you're kind of like released to like go do
to build back towards the movement,
to
right?
do
You're not
higher
gonna,
level things.
You're not going to max out your back squat, but you
For
can
sure.
start box squatting
Yeah.
or even full range of motion squatting at a very low percentage.
Yeah, maybe
and
you're
build
doing
from
goblet
there.
squats first, or you could still do. There's nothing wrong with a barbell. Like just load it appropriately.
All right, there's your plan. How to fix a tweak.
So the plan sounds like it might take a long time, but I think to end, I reiterate Mia's point from earlier, where it's like if you do the steps and you take them seriously and you do it right, so often we see people do that and they come back better than ever. So there's like hope on the other side of the
For sure.
light at the end of the tunnel if you want to accept your fate and attack it head on.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like it takes a long time. I don't know if it necessarily does for everyone. And I think it just depends on the injury, right? And if we're talking about tweaks, then ideally like it's not taking a long time because a tweak isn't an injury. It's not something that's like, I don't really want to say catastrophic, but it's not a major event, right? If it's just a little tweak, it's probably just like something in the background that we just kind of like need to address in order to make sure it doesn't become something more. So for me, like a tweak, ideally coming back from that, it shouldn't take that long. Now, if the tweak turns into an injury, then we're probably looking at just a longer process just in general. And that process is dependent upon how bad the injury is. And maybe it's a week, or maybe it's like a month, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 6 months or 8 months, kind of depending on.
If it's plantar fasciitis, it's a year.
Yeah, that stuff takes forever to get through. I think if you're experiencing a tweak, just like make good decisions. I think you just got to look at yourself and like where you are in the season and what your priorities are and what's important to you. And then just make good decisions based off that so you can do the best for yourself that you can.
And I'm going to go ahead. Kyle's going to hate this too, but if you feel stuck or like you have a reoccurring tweak or you have a traveling tweak like I do, and you're just like, you feel like you're spinning your wheels, this guy does do online PT. And
I do.
He is awesome. So
Thanks.
He's
So y'all
saved me
taking
many,
on
many
clients right
times.
now?
We are.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So if you want these guys' help, what do they do? Just go to the
Go to
website.
the
website.
Yeah. TrainingThink.com.
I don't know. Reach out to me on Instagram.
And
or
you can also get to the rehab from there as well.
Yeah, you can DM me on Instagram. We can have a conversation if you want.
Cool. Thanks, guys. This was awesome.
Yeah, thanks.